Thank you so much for holding this hearing on Opportunity Zone program. I want to thank our witnesses for their insight and their testimony. And Mr. Chairman, as you know, since returning to Congress in 2019, the Opportunity Program has been a top priority on my list to improve, because I understand what this tax incentive program could mean for residents living in historically underinvested communities if done right. Now, sadly, when the bill was first passed, it was rushed through, and here we are 4 years later, and we do not have adequate data to assess whether the program is really benefiting the residents and the communities that it was intended for. And I want to emphasize that this only works if residents currently residing in designated opportunity zones are actually benefiting from the job creation, improved living conditions, and investments over time. If displacement and gentrification are occurring more rapidly now than before the Opportunity Zone program, then this would be a major failure, because the program is supposed to help current residents, in my view. This should be a mutually beneficial program for investors and current residents, and investors should be reaping, the investors should not be reaping the lion's share of the benefits alone. So first, I want to thank our witness, Jessica, Lucas, Judy, and GAO for producing their report. One of the concerns I've had with the Opportunity Zone program was the lack of community involvement required. Nothing requires investors to have to put on projects from local elected officials, community leaders, or even congressional representatives. In the survey sent out by GAO to state officials, responses indicated that officials in Nevada are not sure of how many investments have been made through the Opportunity Zone program. Regardless, investments have been made. It is a major problem if state elected officials are unaware of them, and we need to fix that. So my first question to Ms. Lucas Judy, what recommendations do you have on how, by providing simple data on the Opportunity Zone, how that would help influence the effectiveness for the public to know how this is actually working?
Well, first off, as I mentioned in my opening statement, it would be important to have information on outcomes of the program. What is it that Congress wants to achieve through the Opportunity Zone incentive, and what kinds of questions would it want answered? And then to task an agency such as the Treasury with collecting the data and reporting on it, to have some sort of accountability. This would be similar to what happens with the New Markets tax credit, where you have an agency that is responsible for overseeing the outcomes and reporting on certain data. And then also it's important to have information about compliance, and for IRS to be able to have data that would help it to ensure that that taxpayers are paying their fair share and are using the program properly. And that's why we recommended that IRS study the risks posed by the lack of data. Some of the states that we heard from, and some of the funds that we heard from.
Ask another.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me. I also want to highlight a report issued by the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation in June of last year that assessed the Opportunity Zone. And I know, Mr. Theodos, in your analysis, you found that African Americans make up 13.29% of the census tract, yet 24% of those living in Opportunity Zones are African Americans, and Hispanics make up 17% of all census tracts, yet 30% of Hispanics live in Opportunity Zones. So with the high concentration of people of color, it's important that we pay close attention to the effect of programs that encourage investments in these communities of color. So Mr. Theodos, I know that you've been working on this issue over the past few years, and I just wanted to ask if you could elaborate on any areas around job training, affordability, transparency, and collaboration that came out of your report.
But we're out of time here. We're going to get an answer back to you, Mr. Horsford,